Hi class, today we are going to start taking notes together. So one of your supplies on my syllabus was to make sure that you do have a notebook that you can use throughout our remote learning. Hopefully that way if we do come back to school, you will have everything in a physical notebook. There will be times that I will let you do note-taking digitally, but for the most part, when I do videos of me taking notes, I want you to do them with me. So while you are watching this video today, please feel free to stop and pause the video at any time to make sure that your page looks exactly like my page. By the end of this video today, you should have a full page of notes that resembles mine. We are going to be reviewing how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide positive and negative numbers. What I want you to be able to do by the end of taking these notes today is, if I gave you any problem, whether it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, you would be able to tell me if the answer to that problem is positive or negative without even having to do the calculation. So make sure you follow along today, and if you have any questions afterwards, please make sure to ask me. So just like any class, I want you to start out with your notebook page looking like this, and every day we're going to put the date at the top right. Since I'm recording this earlier, I don't know what the date is, so please make sure you have the correct date at the top, and start with your title, integer operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. I always like to cut my page into 4 pieces because our brain likes when things are compartmentalized. So go ahead and in each box you're going to write out the 4 operations. Pause the video if you need to. Starting out in the top, we're going to do the rules of addition, specifically when the signs are the same in a given problem or calculation. So when the signs are the same, you are going to add them together and keep the sign the same. Simple as that. So if I were to do a positive 4 plus a positive 5, that would give us a positive 9. You would be able to do this even in first grade, right? I'm just going to denote this with parentheses because we're talking about positive and negatives. So throughout the video, when I do this with the parentheses, it's just to show that this is a positive number. We don't need to do that. It's implied when nothing is there that the number is positive. Now, if I were to do the flip side and keep both the signs negative, a negative 4 plus a negative 5 would give us a negative 9. Now, you do actually see the parentheses used quite a bit when we have negative numbers. It's trying to keep your eyes from reading it as a subtraction sign. The next rule is when we have different signs. When we're adding integers together and the signs are different, the big rule is that you're going to subtract the two numbers and take the sign of the larger number. So for my first example, if I were to do negative 4 plus a positive 5, I would subtract those two numbers together. So 5 minus 4 is 1. And in this case, the larger number is the 5, right? The absolute value that is larger is 5. Since the 5 is positive, my answer is going to be positive. Let's reverse those. Let's say in this problem I have a positive 4 and I add a negative 5 to that. Well, I do the same thing. I would subtract 4 from 5. I would get 1. And since the 5 is the larger number, its absolute value is larger, I would take that sign of the larger number. Therefore, it would be negative 1. Jump over to the subtraction side. Subtraction has a big rule, and that's why I want you to put a star here. When we are doing subtraction, you are pretty much adding the opposite, and in math we call this the additive inverse. So a lot of your teachers last year might have said, anytime you see a subtraction sign, we're going to change it to a plus negative, and that's exactly what we're doing. You might also have heard the rule of keep, change, opposite. And I do want you to write this rule down because this is what I say most often. Some teachers say keep, change, flip, but that pertains more to when we are dividing fractions. So KCO, keep, change, opposite, write it down while we go through these examples. For my first example, I'm going to use the same numbers from before. So 4, a positive 4, minus a negative 5. I'm going to keep this first one the same, meaning it's going to stay a positive 4. I'm going to change the operation of subtraction to addition, and I'm going to take the opposite. So since it's a negative 5, it's going to become a positive 5. And now we would just use the rule from the left to add these together. The signs are the same. A positive 4 plus a positive 5 is a positive 9. So with the subtraction, you're always going to go back to the rule of addition because we're changing every single subtraction problem to an addition problem. So if I were to see the same exact problem again, I'd keep it, I'd change the sign, and I'd take the opposite that's there. And that's essentially all I did in this example above. In my second example, I want you to write out negative 4 minus a positive 5. So we have negative 4 minus 5. I'm going to keep the negative 4, change the sign, and make that positive 5 a negative 5. If I refer to the rules that were on the left-hand side of what we do when we add negative numbers, they're both negative, our answer will be negative. Go back and pause the video if you need to for that last one. The rules for multiplication and division are the same, essentially, and they're a little bit easier to remember. So what I write for my multiplication side, I want you to write on the division side the same thing. So when we have the same sign in a multiplication or division problem, our answers are going to always be a positive answer. So if I do negative 5 times negative 5, that would give me a positive 25 because both of the 5s were negative. If I were to do negative 25 divided by negative 5, both the negative 25 and the negative 5 were the same. Therefore, our answer would be positive. When we have different signs, you're going to always have a negative answer. So write that down on both sides. Different signs mean the answer is always going to be negative. So if I were to do negative 5 times a positive 5, those signs are not the same. Therefore, my answer is negative. If I were to do negative 25 divided by a positive 5, they are not the same. They're different. So my answer would be negative. I'm going to say that multiplication and division, even though it is the easier of the rules, this is probably the biggest error people make in math, including myself. We're all human, so sometimes it's kind of passed over when we see a negative sign, and it does make a big difference. You know, if you have negative $1,000 in your bank account, that is very different from having $1,000 in your account, right? So we do have to just be more aware of it, and that's why sometimes in problems that you see, they do like to put parentheses around negative numbers. There's one more thing I want to show you. What happens if there's more than one number? Well, let's take a look at this. I have negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. Whenever you have something like this, there might even be 5 or 6 numbers that have negatives, or maybe it's mixed with negatives and positives. Just know that your answer is always going to be negative when there is an odd amount of numbers that are negative. So, for instance, in this one, all 3 of the 5s here are negative. So we have 3 negative numbers. This is the first one, this is the second, and this is the third. Well, since it's odd, I know that my answer is going to be negative. All right. This is what your entire notebook page should look like right now. So if I were ever to ask you to submit your notes to me, I would want them to be, I always say, almost identical, okay? Meaning you have all the content that's there, you might have spaced it out a little different, but as long as you have everything I have, you would get full credit. Like I said in the beginning of the video, if I were to give you any addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division problem that involves positive or negative numbers, even if you didn't know what the calculation was, like let's say you didn't know what negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5 was, I would want you to be able to tell me that that answer would for sure be negative. Or if I said negative 32 plus a positive 4, I would want you to be able to tell me that that answer is going to be negative, just based on these rules. The more that you have these rules ingrained into your head, the less mistakes you will make as we are going through with math this year.